Welcome to Lunch and Learn on March 9th, 2021. We have today a member of our own League of Women Voters, Abner Perney, uh, fighting the idea that it's only women in the League of Women Voters. And Abner is a past president and he is an expert on cars of many kinds. And so for today, he is going to give us a presentation on battery powered electric cars. Take it away, Abner.
Everybody in this modern times thinks that Tesla equals battery cars, which it does in modern times, but it's not entirely correct because there's history out there. So we're going to quickly blast through some history, blast through some technology, and tell you why you should buy at least one electric car for your household. And because by 2035, you're not going to have it but any other choice. And
Abner,
maybe,
can you see what you're supposed to see now?
yes, I see a picture that says everyone thinks electric cars equals Tesla, which I just put together this morning.
Okay.
That's a Tesla 3 in red and black. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Because historically, turn of the century, 1890s to as late as 1920s, there were hundreds of car manufacturers getting started in the USA. What we see here on the right upper picture is a 1903 Cadillac, which was a one-cylinder engine, crank it up, internal combustion car. And on the left is a Columbia Electric. You can see they're somewhat similar design, except the Columbia Electric has tiller steering. And they're radically different in mode of operation in that on a Columbia Electric, you walk out to your carriage house or garage, you unplug it, you get it in it, you turn it on, and you drive away on the accelerator. Whereas with a Cadillac, you had to go out to your carriage house, adjust your timing, adjust the throttle, crank the engine over a couple of times, then do it a couple more times, and eventually you would have a noisy car ready to motor away to the next screen. So electric cars were developed simultaneously in the beginning, also steam cars. By 1907, Henry Ford was well into developing the Model T, and a company called Detroit Electric was the leading battery-powered electric car company. And in 2009 is when everything changed drastically. Those first two 1903 cars I showed you, the Cadillac and the Columbia Electric, were about the same price, about $750. Henry Ford with the red car in the upper right, the 1909 Model T invented really the car for everybody. And the price was lower, and he still had to it was still noisy, smelly, difficult to start, required a lot of maintenance, and but it was putting everybody on wheels. The Detroit Electric, on the other hand, rapidly improved. We were able to get up to 40 miles range almost off the bat. These are 1909 models, and Detroit Electric was the largest electric car company in the USA until Tesla broke loose 15 years ago. Detroit Electric was popular for cars for women because of the easy starting, easy driving, and Henry Ford bought Detroit Electrics for his wife Clara to drive until automobiles became more refined and had self-starters, and I think she learned how to drive a stick shift, but that's one of the big advantages of electrics. You don't have to shift. You don't really use gears at all in most of them. You just use the variability of the motor. Let's go to another slide. So here's the overall timeline, 1890s to 1930s. You had the very widespread industry, lots and lots of manufacturers. Some counts say there were over 1,300 car companies in that time frame. With ICE is internal combustion engines, gas and diesel, BEV is your battery electric vehicle, and then steam. But in 1912, the electric self-starter for gasoline cars was invented and started to hit the market. Gasoline took over because of the convenience, well, the price first, and then petroleum industry jumped right on it, and petroleum industry, as you may know, was heavily subsidized really almost from the beginning. So gasoline became available and was convenient when it hadn't been in the very beginning of the car industry. So from the 1930s, Detroit Electric died by 1939. There were really no electric cars of any significance from the 1930s to the 1990s. In 1970, we had a fuel crisis. Some of you should remember that. We had long lines for fuel, and we had the Clean Air Act of 1970 because of air pollution. From 1970 to 80, there was a lot of interest in developing electric cars, but we had the same problem we've always had with electric cars, batteries. Now, Thomas Edison got together with Detroit Electric and they developed what was called a nickel iron battery. Had nickel iron batteries in some of those cars, and one of them is in the museum at Abilene, by the way, Mamie Dowd's, Eisenhower's family's 1919 Detroit Electric. Those batteries still work. They're 100 years old. Out of that battery technology, in the 90s, we started developing what you call nickel metal hydride batteries, you may be familiar with. That's what powered the first hybrids. So in the 90s, started getting serious about the environment and fuel economy. And Honda, Toyota, and General Motors were probably the leaders in the technology. General Motors in 1996 introduced the EV1. That was their electric vehicle one, the 2-passenger, very streamlined, ran on nickel metal hydride batteries. They never sold them. They leased them between 96 and 99 on up to 3-year leases. But by 2002, they recalled all of them. They did not renew leases. They destroyed all of them, but about 40, which are in museums today, and only one official one exists. They killed that car, as famously recorded in the movie. And this was all brought about by California and their regulations that required zero tailpipe emissions from a percentage of cars if you're going to sell any cars in California. Well, and they were fought by the manufacturers saying, we just don't have the technology. We can't pull this out of thin air. The rules got lessened, but California did stick with a thing called PZEV, which is partial zero emission vehicles. And actually, any car that coasts by shutting off the gas 100%, which some do, can qualify as a PEZV. So they lessened their standard. You know, Tesla was founded in 2004, started their first car in 2009. They are now the biggest car company that ever existed, the biggest car company in stock market value. Their owner's the richest man in the world. It's just incredible. But anyway, the other incredible thing, the United Kingdom, California, a lot of people are shooting for 2030, only 9 years away, of having no internal combustion cars sold any further, or at least cars that are will have to be electric or partially electric. They might still allow hybrids and plug-in hybrids. China's already announced that sort of a program, and China is the world's largest car market. It sells and makes more electric cars than anybody else. They've got a lot of brands, most of which, they've got a couple of brands that are being sold in the US and probably will be in the near future. But everybody's participating in it, whether they like to or not. There was an announcement just this week that Ford of Europe expects to have only electric cars offered in Europe by 2026, thereby beating both the UK and the the European Union deadlines for going total electric. Now let's go to the next picture. What happened in the US and the world is the two first came hybrids. The trouble with a gasoline car, ICE car, is that they're incredibly inefficient, even though where they're powerful and they're fast and they get the job done, and we've been using them like crazy for 100 years.
Sorry.
Most of the energy, 60 to 65% of the energy, goes out the tailpipe and the radiator and the brakes. It's lost. So hybrids were developed. These are the first two hybrids offered in the USA. Little red cars, the two-seat Honda Insight. The first Honda Insight came out in 99 as a 2000 model. And up there on the upper right is the first generation Prius. Go to the next slide. Hybrids work by having an electric motor assist a small gasoline engine, and by what's called regenerative braking or regen braking. When you coast or when you apply the brakes, the electric motor turns into a generator, and by providing resistance against your forward motion, it slows your car down, but it fills the battery pack. When you take off and accelerate, the electric motor boosts the gasoline engine. And so that makes up for a lot of the loss of energy that's inherent in an internal combustion car. ICE is internal combustion car. HEV is the standard hybrid vehicle. PHEV is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. The things I've read about the deadlines of 2030, 2035, plug-in hybrids are probably still going to be made and considered to be electric vehicles. When you search the fueleconomy.gov to find out what kind of cars are out there, and if you put in a model year like 2021, 20 to 21, and then you put in battery type or engine type, you just put in electricity, you'll get both the plug-in hybrids and the battery electric vehicles. But those are the four engine type, motivation type definitions you need to know. ICE, which is internal combustion, HEV hybrids, PHEV plug-in hybrids, and battery electric vehicle. Next slide, please. Okay, sitting there in front of the former Abner's Autos business, I'm out of business now, I closed at the end of the year, but is a 2013 California compliance Ford Focus Electric. It's a pure battery electric car. The EPA range is about 74 miles. Next slide. When you get in an electric car, almost all of them, every modern one I've had, from the Nissan Leaf, the Ford, I've driven the new Mustang Mach-E and the Chevy Bolt. They all use the keyless entry thing. You get in the car, you push the starting button. Some of them make a little tone so that you know it's recognizing you're there. Some of them, the dash just lights up. All of them end up having a ready light of some kind. It's green and it says the word ready, or it's a picture of a little car with a little arrow front and back, kind of a silhouette. But this is that Ford Focus Electric on a summer day when the weather is mild. And you'll see I've already gone 32.8 miles on this charge. The picture of the battery there says I have approximately 55 miles to go. That's 88 miles. That's better than the EPA rating. You also see 203 watts per mile, watt hours per mile, 6.6 kilowatt hours have been used thus far, and I fiddled around at low city speeds for about 2 hours to get that 32 miles out of it. So a little stop and go. That's the sort of thing every electric car tells you, and that's the one big difference in driving an electric car, is that you do kind of have to pay attention to what's left in your battery more so than you need to pay attention to a regular gasoline car as to what's left in your gas tank. But it's easy to do once you're used to it. Next slide. This is a more modern, this is a 2017, it's only 4 years newer, Chevrolet Bolt electric. Even though it's about the same size car, it's a hatchback 4-door that's a 5-passenger. The Chevy has a little more room in it because it was designed as an electric car, whereas the Ford was adapted from a gasoline car and the battery pack takes up some of the luggage space. This car is designed with the battery packs in the floor of the chassis to begin with, so the weight is low and you have as much space as any car of that general size. The beauty of the Chevy Bolt is it goes 259 miles on the battery pack, and they're relatively cheap as a used car. You can buy these in the 17 through 19 range for under $20,000, and usually they'll only have about 30,000 miles on them. So this is a good place to start. If you're interested in an electric car at all, it's got plenty of range. It's a good size. It's really handy to drive around town. I had the back seat folded down. I was using it like a truck most of the time I had it, but I do that to other cars. Next slide. That's the interior of the Chevy Bolt, just to show you it's ordinary. It's got a shifter that looks like a regular shifter. It's got a big touch screen there in the middle, which is mainly used for your radio, because everybody loves Sirius XM and FM and go back and forth and all that stuff. Heated steering wheel is standard on that model, and heated seats. And you need that in electric cars because if you have to heat the interior, it uses almost as much power as going down the road uses. Turn the page, please. Next car. Okay, this is the screen on the startup of the Chevy Bolt. You can see the little ready light. It's green down by the P because the car is still in park. You can see a little symbol above that says regen. That just gives you a meter, lets you know that you're charging. Above on the Chevy Bolt, one of the things I like is that it tells you how much kilowatts you're using all the time in that little screen up above. Now, if you're not technically minded or you just don't care, you don't have to look at all this stuff. These dashes are fairly reconfigurable. You can make it really simple and have nothing on there but the speed and the odometer. This is the second to the most simple layout. On the left side, it shows your available battery pack. It says that if you drive, it says max 276 at the top, minimum 191 at the bottom. 234 is the approximate range based on how I'd been driving before I shut off. They do rolling average things all the time. It's a little faint to see, but it also shows that on this charge, I've already gone 56 miles. I can go 234 more. That's way over the EPA rating of 259. But this was, again, in spring and summer. I don't think I was using air conditioning, and I know I wasn't using heat. So air conditioning and heat cut your range a lot. Next page. How are we doing for time?
We're good.
Okay, so I'll just keep rambling on. People always ask, well, where do you charge your electric car? Well, the number one place is 84% of car owners surveyed that reply to their surveys on their electric cars charge at home. If you're going to take a little trip, you may need to find public charging. So this is a public charging spot about quarter mile from my Estes Park home from last week, and that vehicle charging there is a Toyota Prius Prime of the current model. Prius Prime is a plug-in hybrid. The reason they're probably charging, I didn't catch these people to talk to them, but is because everybody loves to free power, and if you pull up to this charging station in Estes Park, you can have 4 hours, up to 4 hours charging absolutely free. So you charge this car up, you got plenty to drive around the national park. You go back to Denver, you'll get home having as many miles on it available on your battery charge meter as you had when you left Denver, probably. Okay, so next slide. This is a bigger charging station in Estes Park. This is a new one. It's brand new this winter. First time I'd seen it was this month. The other side of the visitor center. This one's not free, but this is more typical of what you need if you're going to try to make long trips in an electric car. These are high voltage chargers and quick DC quick chargers, direct current. You use a credit card or you put it on your phone actually. There are a number of systems. The two biggest ones are ChargePoint, which these are, ChargePoint and Electrify America. Electrify America is interesting because it is part of the punishment package for Volkswagen having cheated on their diesel car pollution standards. And so they've built an electric network. They're quitting building diesel cars. They pretty much have 100% quit that already, and they are concentrating on electric cars. So you will soon be seeing electric Volkswagens on the road. Their charge system is already clear across I-70 because I've looked at that. I was about to, before I closed out my business, I was seriously contemplating going to Denver, going to our Estes Park house with that Chevy Bolt. Well, I can do that on Electrify America because they have stations in Salina, Hayes, Colby, Flagler, Colorado, right at the world famous I-70 diner, the one that has a pink Cadillac on a post for a sign. Great place for chili. They have excellent chili. They have okay diner food, and they're in Flagler, Colorado, in the middle of nowhere. So that's a good place if you were running low on battery in your electric car. It's good to know that they now have an Electrify America fast charging station there. Next slide. Where are we? Okay, this is your typical kind of snooty Tesla owner getting his free charge there at that first station I showed you in Estes Park, but he's laughing out loud about watts. LOL watt. I don't know exactly what that means, but you kind of get the idea. It means no gas ever used by that automobile, which is a Tesla 3. Next slide. Coming up, if you've been paying attention to the news, most of the talk on the public media and on advertising, like during the Super Bowl, is about electric trucks. So the one in the upper left there is the Lordsburg truck that's being built at a former GM plant, and with some assistance from GM still. The lower right one is the new GMC Hummer, supposed to be out again later this year, I think, as a 2022 model. Next slide. More trucks. The Rivian is the one on the left with the funky looking little vertical hash mark type headlights. Rivian has the support and cooperation with Ford Motor Company. One of the cool things about the Rivian, and they have a video which I didn't try to incorporate in this, is that it uses what is called hub motors. One of the big advantages of electric cars is much fewer moving parts from the manufacturing standpoint. Ford has announced that they think they will use 30% of the labor. I mean, they will save 30% in their assembly plants. Say they will save 30% of the labor because the cars are much more simple than a gasoline car. The Rivian, but the savings is the fact that an electric motor is really only one big moving part and a couple of bearings, whereas a gasoline motor has got 1,000 parts or more in it. And then the other big savings are the transmissions. Since the torque and power of an electric motor is so flexible, you don't really need a transmission. And if you've noticed any of the late model cars, you've got 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 speed transmissions and continuously variable transmissions. Well, most electric cars are going to be a very minimalist transmission, or essentially none other than a reduction gear and a differential. They'll still have some drive shafts, except the Rivian, and maybe some other trucks will be coming along that way. They use hub motors, so there's no transmission whatsoever. There are four motors in the four-wheel drive version of this truck, one in each wheel. And there's just trick electronics to control that. One of the things you can do with that, when every wheel's powered separately, is you can make it operate like a skid steer tractor. You could, in dirt, you could do this on pavement, but it tear your tires up fast. But if you're on dirt, you can turn that car around, that pickup around in its own length, because it will spin itself by turning the wheels backwards on one side and forward on the other at the same time. So you can just snap that thing around in your farmyard, not take out any fences, not take up very much space, that sort of thing. Pretty handy. And then the bottom picture, of course, is the outrageous but still promise, because they took orders, Tesla Cybertruck, which is freaking huge. It's 20 some feet long, and it's wide and it's heavy, but they'll probably sell because it's so bizarre, it's cool. And it comes with a covered bed. And that's a 4-door, 6-passenger, 5 and 6 passenger. I think they're going to do 6-passenger. One of the few cars that's going to have bench seats in modern times. So you put 6 in that pickup and go places and be very, very wedgy. What's the next slide? Do we have any left? Oh, why buy an electric car? Same thing as it was in '03. It's quiet. It's low maintenance. No oil changes. The brakes last a long, long time, and even in the basic hybrid, you'll find this. Regen braking does so much of the braking that the brakes themselves, the actual wheel brakes, last a couple 100,000 miles in a typical hybrid, in typical driving. So you have almost no brake maintenance. You have almost no maintenance at all, other than just checking the suspensions together. Taking care of your tires is probably going to be the highest part of the maintenance. Low fuel costs. In the cars that I've actually used, I've only used 120 volt home charging, and I have a 120 volt meter that I can actually check the kilowatt hour usage. The Nissan Leaf, the Chevy Bolt, the Ford Fusion, Ford Focus Hybrid, all worked out to about 4 cents a mile. Well, 4 cents a mile at $2 a gallon gas is 50 miles per gallon. At $3 a mile, it starts getting really up there. At $4 a gallon gas, that's 80 miles, or like 200 miles per gallon, I think. Yeah, 4 cents a mile. So, or 100 miles per gallon equivalent. So in cents per mile, your fuel cost is going to be a lot less. Even with the heavier, faster ones like the Tesla and the new Tesla competitor that's mass market, the Ford Mustang Mach-E, you're probably still going to be close to that 6 cents a mile range. So that's darn good, especially compared to $3 to $4 a gallon gas, which is on the horizon, so they tell us. If you primarily charge at your own home or your own place of business, but your own home ideally, it is worth the expense to get a 240 volt outlet and a 240 volt charger. The Ford, and I've driven one of the new Fords, and I didn't put any picture of it in here. It comes with a 240 volt charging cord standard. So all you need to do is have an outlet installed in your garage. Our friend, everybody here probably knows Dr. Jurkovich. Dr. George Jurkovich is one of the people that bought one of the first 4 Mustang Mach-E's here in town. He bought it when the weather was the worst possible it could be for an electric car, because they don't like the cold. As I said before, they use as much power to stay warm as they use to motor around. But he bought one and he put in an electric outlet in his garage. He said it only cost him $400. So he'll get that back pretty fast in charging. And it saves you, it charges 3 times as fast, even though it's only twice the voltage. So the other advantage of using off-peak is people don't realize that Coal-fired power plants do not throttle down well. So about as low as they can quickly throttle down is about from 100% power to about 60% power. Well, what happens between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. or 6 a.m.? Frequently, they only need about 30% of the power. Well, the way electric generation works, it only generates what you actually use, but it's burning. That fire is hot enough, it's burning enough coal that it could be running at 60%. So if you're charging at night, the power company ought to pay you to take the power, which of course they don't do, but some of them do give you a lower rate in those off-peak hours, and they could do it with the meters that they now have, with the smart meters that almost every house in Salina has. But at any rate, that helps balance the grid by using the power the power from coal, and the same thing happens with nuclear. They don't throttle up and throttle down fast. So you're using the power that would otherwise be going to waste or wouldn't be generated, but you're using the fuel that is going to waste. So it works out to help the grid. We all know from our polar experience last month, a couple, 3 weeks ago, what was that last month or is that early this month? At any rate, from the polar vortex experience, that our grid is weak and needs a lot of work anyway. And that's going to be the biggest issue for hitting those 2030 and 2035 deadlines. Now, a lot of people react that, well, that's crazy to think we'll all have electric cars by 2030. We didn't say we'd all have electric cars by 2030. We said we will only be selling electric cars in 2030 and 2035. There will still be millions of gas cars on the road because it's going to take, what, 25 to 30 years minimum to turn over most of the inventory of cars. You only sell 17 million a year, and you got 300 million out there in use today. So that's at 15 million a year, that's 20 years. So minimum time is going to be like 20 years to convert to a largely electric operation. The tailpipe emissions are less, even if you're running on, the total emissions are less, even if you're running on 100% coal-fired electricity in an electric car, just because it's that much more efficient than the old 35% efficient petroleum cars. In Kansas, we are told we're getting as much as 41% wind out of Evergy right now. We can get as much as 30% nuclear and then 30% coal. That gives you 100%. But when the wind is low, we have natural gas backup peak power plants that can come online and go offline fast, can throttle up and throttle down, because they're frickin' jet engines, just like you fly on in a modern airplane. And so we've got fairly clean electricity to begin with. So you're doing much better than a gasoline car if you're driving an electric car in Kansas. They're easy and smooth to drive, same advantage that you had in 1903 if you bought a Columbia Electric, in 1907 when you bought a Detroit Electric, because you just get in and turn on the switch and away you go. One pedal operation, I mentioned that. That's one of the features that has been developed with the good computers and things, is that, and with the regen braking, your accelerator, you let off. If you let off all the way, if you have the one pedal operation turned on, which in some cars is push a button, in the Chevy Bolt earlier versions up to 19, you just put it in a fake low gear, the indicated low gear, and you can drive with just that one pedal almost everywhere. Now, if a child runs out in front of you, you still need to hit the brakes, or in some cases, the automatic driving assistance that's in most of these cars may see the person and slam on the brakes for you, may not. So even if you have automatic emergency brake, you need to be prepared to stand on the brakes should something totally unexpected happen. But you can drive around town, especially on that one pedal operation, just like it says, you're only using your right foot. And and it works pretty smooth. And I want to say once again, since they're still best for local use, the best deal, if you got multiple cars in your household, is to get a fully electric car for your daily runaround car. And still keep a gas car for when you go to Colorado or Kansas City or wherever, the big trips, or a hybrid for the big trips, or a plug-in hybrid. But anyway, it makes a lot of sense that there should be at least one electric car somewhere in your fleet if you've got more than two or more cars. Okay, she did manage to get these things to come up. We were having a lot of trouble doing this. This is your fueleconomy.gov. Fueleconomy.gov is the best place to start shopping because there's still a lot of confusion by dealers, and some dealers have to make an investment in electric cars that some are reluctant to do. So, like if you're interested in a Chevrolet Bolt, which is one of the most available cars you would think in the country as an electric car, well, it is. It's with the conventional dealer, but not every Chevy dealer sells them. Home Automotive in Abilene does. Conklin in Salina is talking about completely dropping Chevrolet, is what I've heard. But they are not enthused about doing Chevys, but they sell Priuses. So they've got a split personality on the subject of electric assist. At any rate, you go to fueleconomy.gov. There are all kinds of searches you can do. This is a result from a search where you just put in model year 2020 to 2021, and then you put in fuel type electricity, and boom, you get a potential 166 models to choose from. The first one on here is the Tesla Model 3 Standard. That is the highest fuel economy, electric fuel economy car you can buy in America today. It is not the longest range version, but it's the lighter and the rear drive only version, so it gets the best mileage, and that's why it shows 141 miles per gallon combined equivalent. Those are MPGE. That's equivalent miles per gallons of gas. Second one I picked is, and these are listed from the highest fuel economy to the lowest, so you can pull any four you want, and I picked the low side of the money because I'm a cheap guy. Hyundai Ioniq Electric. I ran into a couple, but I didn't get the picture of it, that was charging their Ioniq Electric at those higher powered chargers in Estes Park last week. They bought it after having a Hyundai Elantra hybrid, and they said that convinced them they might as well go all electric, and they did with a 2019 Ioniq Electric. 133 miles per gallon equivalent, range 170 miles, not necessarily the highest for the money, but adequate for most purposes. The Kona Hyundai is a bigger SUV, more squared off, longer range, 258 miles. The Chevy Bolt EV that I had showed earlier, the little blue one, 259 miles range. It's also ranks up there. And in my experience of actual sales prices, that is the lowest priced electric car and the most miles for the money, because you can buy a nice low mileage Bolt used for under 20,000. The brand new ones are priced at about $37,000 to $41,000, but they're giving on 20 and 21 models, they're giving $14,000 factory discounts. So brings them down into the upper 20s. So they are the best buy, brand new, in my humble opinion, if you want to get a new car experience and economical. Can we go to the next one?
Next one. Just a minute.
Next one of those things. This will take a little more time because it's a trick that she had to invent herself, convince computers to do it. This group is just to show you again some more of the moderately priced ones and some of the cars that are really not even available yet, although they say they're 2021s. They're just barely coming out. This is 2021 Nissan Leaf is out and available. For a while, Nissan Leafs were the #1 selling electric car in America. They outsold Tesla for quite a while until Tesla finally got the Model 3 and got their manufacturing level up. They are made in the USA too. Nissan Leaf factories in Tennessee. Mini Cooper I put in there because it's new, and I've always loved Mini Coopers. I had the very first one ever registered in this town back in 2002 of the new generation of Mini Coopers. It's fairly short mile and fairly pricey, 110-mile range, but they're just cool. Cool to drive, fun to drive. Ford Mustang Mach-E rear-wheel drive California Route 1 model. That's rear drive only. The one I drove and the 4 that they've had to sell here were all-wheel drives, and they were the long-range version, but this is a medium range version for the new Ford, and that range is, no, that is the long range. 305 miles is their range, so they are getting comparable, close to Tesla's longer range cars, and they are lower priced than Tesla's longer range cars. So they are the first real competition to the modern Teslas, which have only been on the market. 2009 was a Roadster, and so they've only been out there on the market for 12 years. But they do have the highest performance, the longest range cars, and relatively high prices. Put the Volkswagen ID4 up there. The ID4, if you're in an area where you see car magazines and or car ads, you may have seen an ad for an ID4. I know I have. ID4 is actually Volkswagen's 3rd or 4th total electric car in their worldwide scheme of things. They made total electric Jettas. Everybody knows what a Jetta is, but you don't see very many total electric Jettas, but they did sell them as California compliance cars in the USA since about 2012. So theoretically, you could find an electric Jetta in the USA. They're pretty darn rare. The ID3 has been on sale in Europe for quite a while. They're not even going to sell the ID3 in the USA. The ID4 is coming out this year, and like I said, there's ads for it right now. 250 miles range, medium price, starting about 30, I think, right around 32,000 and going up to 40,000. So,
Abner,
yes.
We're kind of running low on time, so you want to hurry through these or take some questions?
I don't know if we got anything else on the other cars. We've got some more higher priced ones. This is the kind of the selection of the plug-in hybrids, the Toyota Prius Prime, the #1 selling Toyota model I've heard recently is the Toyota RAV4 hybrid, but there's also a Prime hybrid, which is plug-in hybrid. That's one of the larger SUVs. It's got, you got to go to the spec page, the next one, to tell me again for sure, but I think it's got about almost 50 miles range. Got to go to the next sheet.
Next slide.
Yeah. There it is. Okay, that's got the range. See the little line with the little car down below? That's your gasoline only range, your electric only range. 25 miles for a regular Prius Prime, a plug-in Prius. You jump over to the RAV4 SUV, it's 42 miles electric range, and then 38 miles per gallon. Whereas the Prius that's still similar to the one Ann drives is rated at 54 miles per gallon. I like the Hyundai Ioniq. I think I talked about that earlier. There's a plug-in version of Hyundai Ioniq. They sell Hyundai Ioniqs as a hybrid, a plug-in hybrid, and a total electric. They sell Kia Niros as a hybrid, a plug-in, and a total electric. I did own a Kia Niro hybrid for a while, and for the time period I owned it, I got about 48 miles per gallon. It's a small station wagon, third car over to the right. Really convenient, nice car around town. 26 miles is its total electric range on the plug-in hybrid. So that's about it. Are we taking any questions?
Sure.
Do I have another slide? I don't think so. It's everything you need to know about electric cars.
David wants to talk.
I think you mentioned that a lot of the vehicles
What?
do not have gears to them, and looking at the Chevy Bolt, I thought I saw that they had some gear shifts in them. It seems, it's maybe a dumb question, but in terms of economy of power, doesn't it make sense to gear the vehicles? And do you know, is that a difference in the Bolt versus everything else?
Doesn't it make more sense to have gears than to have no gears at all?
Not really. Not really. Electric motors, modern electric motors and the electronics that control them are so good, you don't need, there's no point in having gears. You have the maximum torque when when the motors first turns, and you just speed it up. And they got variable speed figured out so well that it just uses, it actually, the faster you go, the less power it uses for a while, up to about 45, 50 miles an hour. Then it starts to have a add power back in. So electrical motor is so much more flexible than a gasoline motor that you don't really need a transmission most of the time. Some of them are going to have transmissions, but it's almost a redundant thing. And there'll be simplified transmissions. There'll be either CVTs or there'll be the like a 2-speed transmission. So they'll have a high-speed cruising gear, and then they'll have a regular gear for 0 to 65 or so.
Here's my question, Abner. What happens to highway maintenance? Isn't that all on gasoline taxes?
That is one of the treacherous, one of the things that people that are taxing us and writing their tax laws like to point and scream. Well, right now it's not really a big issue because there's only 2.5% of the cars out there are gasoline, are electric powered. And of course, if we get on up to 5, 10, 15%, it'll start making a difference. So some states, and I don't remember if Kansas actually enacted it, but they did pass one where they were going to charge you for having a hybrid and they were going to charge you more for having an electric car. It's not like you don't pay taxes. If you read your electric bill, there's a big chunk of it is taxes, but those taxes aren't dedicated to highway maintenance. So yeah, they probably are going to have a different tax structure. I gotta kill that. You're gone, Martha. Don't call me back. You're going to probably have to have some innovative tax you per mile, something like that. Since these things are so well, the electronics are so high, theoretically, they could just spy on you and tell how many miles you drove. But it should be an easy matter that you could certify your mileage every time the number of miles you drove every time you got a new license, and pay a cents per mile tax or something. Everything's locked up. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yes.
Or is my bad internet failed us?
You're good.
Abner, what's the, I mean,
Cox
like, are our dealers equipped and good at service on electric vehicles that are? Well,
I'm sorry. My
if you
phone's
buy-
interrupting me.
If you
Yeah.
buy an electric vehicle and like is the Ford dealer or the Chevy dealer or the Toyota dealer in town, do they have people that really know how to work on electric cars?
Yes, they do. The ones that are going to actually market electric dealers. We have, our Ford people have already put, they already have electric trained special mechanics in service. And an awful lot of it is electronics that you're getting more complicated on cars anyway, all the control systems and what have you. But if you do have to do something mechanical like the brakes or the wheel bearings, if there's collision damage, you got to have training because those batteries are dangerous if they're damaged, or if you short one out. Like the little Ford that I've had, the Ford Focus Electric's 366 volts DC. Well, if you grab the two wrong cables in the wrong place on that car, you would be toasted. The Teslas are even higher voltage. They run 400 and some volts. So there are a lot of safety disconnects in there. And I had my Nissan Leaf totaled. I was parked, taking a class at Kansas Wesleyan on Cloud Street, and some arguing idiot drove into it with an old Honda Accord. It caved in both the front door and the back door and the side, to push the whole car about 4 foot sideways, and then his car veered off to the right and over the curb and ended up in the middle of the lawn at Wesleyan. And they found me, the police did, and took me out there, and they said, well, it hasn't caught fire. That's a good sign. And I said, yes, it is. And then, so I walked up to it, and the officer was arguing with the Honda, because the Honda guy wanted to drive it home, and the whole front end was smashed on his car, and it was night. He had no headlights, but it would still moved, because Hondas are pretty rugged too. But so I turned the thing on, and nothing flared up, the Nissan Leaf. And I selected reverse gear, and it backed up a few feet. And I selected drive again, and it pulled back into the space. And I walked around it. The officer walked around and said, well, you have all your lights. You can drive it if you want to. And so I did. So I drove the thing for another 2 weeks, just never opened the doors on the right side. Took it into the body shop. The body shop says, well, this is going to be expensive. I have to do some research. They called me back and said $500. The wholesale value of the car was $12,000. So I got a check for $13,000 from the insurance company and called it good. But that's with Nissan Leaf. Nissan doesn't build spare body parts for that car, even though they're made in the USA. They don't just they just build cars, and then a few get wrecked. And if you need to repair a Nissan Leaf's body, you're probably going to have to buy parts off a wreck if you can find one that has the right parts. So if you wreck it very bad, you just write it off. At least that's what happened to mine. But it's an aluminum structure on a Nissan Leaf. It's very specialized, and they only have one. They have two factories in the whole world, one in Tennessee that builds Nissan Leafs, and they're aluminum bodies. But it was rugged. I mean, it didn't hurt it, and it didn't catch fire, and it drove fine, but you couldn't open the doors anymore on the right side. So hasta la vista, baby.
So what, I mean, safety ratings on electric, does that affect safety ratings?
They're generally as good as the equivalent size car. So you see them 4 and 5 star rated on crash testing that the independent insurance people put on your car ratings, and that the government puts on the car ratings. So yeah, they're as safe as any other car. Now, people are paranoid about fire, but the truth is, you're carrying around anywhere from a few gallons to 45 gallons of gasoline in your car. Gasoline is explosive, boys and girls. That's how the car operates. It operates on repetitive internal combustion, which is thousands of explosions of gasoline per minute. And so, so it's silly to worry about the fire hazard, really, because they have structure, especially the newer cars that are designed from the ground up as electric. They've got big side beams on them. They got the batteries in the center of the car where they're pretty well protected from collision. And they've had a few spontaneous fires, but so do gasoline cars. They just don't talk about it in gasoline cars anymore. But I've seen them on the highway driving to Colorado many times. Cars that just, something went wrong and they frickin' burned down spontaneously going down the road. Yeah. It's scary.
Abner, in terms of used vehicles, I think I'm getting from you that probably the most available would be the Chevy Bolt. But is that true? And how does that are there Ford Machs out there used?
Well, I'm assuming that the Fords won't be available. Well, this is the whole car market we're in right now. One of the reasons I gave up the used car business. The only people buying cars for short term, 1, 2, 3 years, virtually the only people left doing that are renters. They buy or lease them for 1, 2, or 3 years. Then most people are buying a car with the factory Ford, the financing of 5, 6, 7, 8 years.
Yeah.
So what happens is most of the cars don't get traded in until they're paid off. That's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, and they'll already have 100,000 miles on them. So you either have to pay practically new price to get a new car, or 1, 2, or 3-year-old car. There are no cars on the market between 3 years and 6 years old, or they're very few. And if they are, and if they're low miles, high priced, then when people get the cars paid off, they got 100,000 miles on them, and they're still high priced, $10,000 and up. And trucks are worse. Trucks are 20 and 30, 20. Oh, it appalls me to see wholesale trucks with 120,000 miles on them going for 11, 12, 15, $16,000 wholesale. And that's why I gave up, because I'm just too old and I can't cope with inflation anymore. but
So
that's
is
the cars are trickle down only. You either got to have money to buy a new one, or wealth.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Is Chevy Bolt the only one that's offering that $14,000?
Oh, they're offering a big discount, and they are dramatically lowering their price for the 22 models. In 22, they're going to have a Bolt extended. It's a bigger one. They're calling it an EUV, but it's their SUV version. It's longer and larger inside. It's still going to be 5-passenger. It's still going to be 259 miles range. That'll look similar. They've changed some of the details, made them less busy, make them any rate. But they've lowered the prices dramatically. They're going to start. I think the basic Bolt is going to start below 30,000 sticker price, which will make it the lowest priced electric car that's worth having on the market.
Well, I would think the range is a really important item. And you were mentioning Electrify America and the other one. Do they have websites where you can track where their stations are, and no matter what direction you're going?
Right, and most car companies are coming with a program for your phone. But I hate all this electronics, so I haven't been doing it. But like, I got Ford Pass on my car, and I've got something on this Honda I just bought too that I could be using on my phone. But yeah, they have applications that tell you where these are all over. I have looked at ChargePoint and Electrify America, the two big systems I've looked at. They give you a map that's detailed. You can have it on your phone. You can have it on your navigation screen on your car. A lot of cars now, I'm assuming, I haven't got it hooked up right yet, where if you got an Apple phone, you've got Apple CarPlay, and if you got an Android phone, there's something called Android Auto or something. But anyway, when you sync your phone, you can bring up the phone's navigation system on your car's entertainment screen. And so, and there are apps that'll tell you where to go for electricity. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
We're done.
We are coming right up on an hour.
Are we done?
Yeah, and people have been saying nice things in the chat. We've had Grace Wilson here, who's the League of Women Voters of Kansas, second vice president for communication, and she congratulated Salina on its car parades, the Cruising for Voters last summer. And and Dave Parks said thanks, and Mary Mertz, and I think Tom, let's see. Yeah, Tom Mertz said goodbye too. So I think we all need to say goodbye. Thank you so much for